All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry, I had to take a little detour. My network was lagging. So, all right, but I think we are good to go now. Um, okay, so before we start, I think I'll just do a little recap of what we had in last class. So, in last class, we talked about creating a React app, and we also discussed how we could use some things in React. I also helped broaden the perspective of how the folder structure in React was actually made and how it came about. And I think we discussed how React renders applications and all that. Okay, so today we'll be diving deeper into React. For today, we'll discuss a little bit about it's a little too. Okay, so I think that's what we'll be discussing today. So I'll be giving you guys an in-depth view into kind of like the difference between both of them. Okay, so I think that's what we'll be discussing today. All right, so let's actually start. Okay, so uh, let me start sharing my screen. So, all right, so please confirm if you can actually see my screen so I know I'm on the right track. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Am I loud enough? Am I clear enough?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, so let me go over to the project folder, which we opened from last time. All right, so and inside demo class. Okay, so okay, all right, and then I think I'll just do and PM start. Okay, let me get this. Okay, so and get this as soon as possible. All right. I hope my VS Code is clear enough for you guys to see. All right. So our data is actually trying to open live server for us in the background. So I think once it does that, then we can actually start. All right. So for this class, we'll be diving into components. We'll start with components first of all. Okay. So I remember in the last class, I showed us how to render lists using also rendering lists in normal JavaScript or vanilla JavaScript. Also, we did a little bit of something. Let me get to my terminal. Let me see why it hasn't come up yet. Okay, so it's still still coming up anyways. So I think once it's done, then we'll start so we can see from our browser what we have and what we are supposed to do. Okay. Um, about that. So we'll be discussing components today. All right. So basically, components are functions in JavaScript. JavaScript could actually be components in React, and components actually take up an arbitrary input, or they take up a parameter called okay. So with that, all right. So I think we are up. All right. So that's what we had last time. All right. So like I said, components are functions in JavaScript. Now, like, what do I mean by that? If you take a look at this app.js is actually the app component. We found that deep down, the overall thing, it is just a function. Okay, just const app equal to an anonymous function. That's just basically what. All right, so let's take this off a little. So that's just basically what components are. Components are functions, okay, and nothing more to that. All right, so they actually accept a value. So what do we mean? Components actually take up one value, and that's props, which is what could go in here. And with that, we could actually pass in data to the components using props. Okay, so we could have an example, let's say above this. We could have an example called greeting. So let's say const. Uh, Mind the components, since they are actually props, or since they are actually functions, they started with capital letter. Okay, so in case you didn't actually notice that, but if you look at app, see that app starts with capital letter. So components are supposed to start with capital letter for all of them. Okay, so you could have an or a function called greeting. Now greeting is going to be called to a functional component, which is this, and for this you could have the return statement, which is a method per se that returns some just x, like so. Now inside it you can have something like hello, sorry, um, can have a h1 inside it, and oops, sorry, what's wrong with my mouse? Okay, so let's say hello world. Now, if we save this, okay, it's not going to show yet because we haven't really called it up in JavaScript. So if you just come down here and call greeting and be like this. All right, so now if we do this and we go to our browser, we see that we have a hello world here. Okay, so I have hello world here. All right, so that's basically what a component is. All right, so this is in the smallest, simplest way the definition of a component. Now, a component is just basically a JavaScript function, and in React, that is valid syntax. Okay, now a function or a component, as I said earlier, takes in a particular um, parameter, and that is the props. So with the props, the component can actually pass in data, okay, to the props. All right. So what do we mean? So we could say something like this. This is hello world. We could do this. We could say prop, and down here, okay, do this. And call to, let's see, okay, and we save this and we check what we have. We see hello Franklin. Okay, so now what this means is that with React, functions can be are components, and those components actually take in data, and those data can be passed and rendered in the DOM using the props. Okay, now for one other very important detail too is that components, oh sorry, props are immutable. So what do we mean by props are immutable? I cannot come here and say props.name equal to John. This is wrong. This will not work. In fact, if you save this and you run this, you will definitely get an error. Okay. Now we have gotten an error. The page is blank. If I pull up the console, if I pull up the console, I think you're going to find that there's actually going to be an error somewhere, and that's because props are immutable in JavaScript. Okay, so this is wrong, very, very wrong. This is not valid syntax. This right here is valid syntax. It's okay to use props.name, but please do not attach value at all. Okay, so it doesn't work that way. Now, okay, I think that's that. But then we also have another type of component, okay, and that's called a class component. Okay, now a class component, I think, kind of like is a stateful component. Okay, so what do I mean by a stateful component? I think when we get to states, that's when I'll explain that very well. Uh, but since React actually deals with ES6 and above, so at the advent of ES6, there were classes in JavaScript, and those classes actually are used, okay, in React to actually create a component. So, like, how is this done? All right, to do this, I'll create a new component. Okay, so um, what I'll create a new file. I'll create a new file, and I'll call that file hello.jsx. Now, inside that file, I'll create a class component. Now, before you create a class component, first thing you have to do, okay, unlike the functional components here, where you don't really have to do much. The same thing with what's it called, the index.js. These are all functional components, okay. But the class component is actually different, okay. Now, for the class component, this is what you do. React and import component. All of this from React. Yep. I think from React. All right, so these are the two things you need to import. And then you can now come here and say class hello extend component. Now inside this you can have your render method, and this is what the inside then you now have your return, because you definitely want to return something. So you can now say let's just say returning h1. That's going to say hello, let's say hello world from class components. All right, so then I think after this, all right, then after this, need your export statements. That exports hello. Okay, so this is basically the similarities between a class component and a an app component. Okay, I think I have an error here. So I think just export default. Hello. That's that. Sorry. Okay, so a typo here. It's supposed to be component. Yeah, we are good. All right, so this is basically the difference between a class component and a functional component. So this is a standard class component, and this is a functional component. Okay, so with that, we could actually import this here. We can import the class component there, like import hello. Yep, from hello. All right, so down here we could just have function with, we have this. Same thing as what we have. But if you take a look at it, you find that using the class components is kind of like tedious than using the functional components. Okay, now that's on this side. Let's say, for example, we wanted to pass data, okay, using the class components. How would we do that? Like all we did here with the greeting component here, there we had to pass down props, okay, from this. Now, with ES6 classes, there's something we have. We have the constructor method, okay? Now, so this is what we do. We use a constructor. So let's go. constructor, and inside that we have super. Now inside here, this is where we pass our props, and we also pass it down here too. Now after passing down the props, why are you doing this for me? Okay, so after passing down our props, then we can actually go back to our div class in the app component and actually render it. So basically, this is just how an app component is actually rendered normally. Just any questions so far? If there's no questions, I think I'll just continue from where we stopped. Any questions so far? Let me check. Chat. Okay, so Chidiogo, do you have a question?
No, Frank, I don't have.
Okay, sorry. Thought the yes please was for a question or something. Okay. All right. So if there are no questions, then let's continue from where we stopped. Okay. Um, Now passing props from, I don't know why this is showing me an error. Uh, just hold on. Let's see what this is supposed to be. Okay. All right. So sorry about that. I'll come back to the constructor later, but I just want to explain something. All right. So let me take this off. Let me do this. Now we have this dot.
I'm not hearing you, sir. Or is it me?
We are not hearing you, sir.
Okay, so guys, just hold on a bit. Let's sort that out quickly.
Hello guys, can you hear me now? Hello.
Very well, sir.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. So, please, a quick one before I continue. Where did you guys lose me? So I know where to start from. Guys, can you hear me? If you can hear me, I need someone to just give me a quick answer in the chat section. Where did you guys
Yes,
lose
we
me?
can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah, like where did you stop hearing me? So I know where to continue from.
From the constructors, the super props, I could not hear you anymore. Where you talked about
Okay.
super, then past props.
Okay. 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 All right. Thank you. So about that, all right. So this, let me share my screen. All right. So this was what I was talking about. Uh, I removed the constructor and I removed super because using that's when you actually want to work with states. Okay. But we haven't gotten to that part yet, so I felt there was no need putting that there. But in essence, this is a standard class component where you have class hello extends components. But first of all, always remember that you have to. Okay, this is the structuring. So basically, what you could do is this. You could actually take this off, okay, and you can have use a class component, but and vice versa. Also, it seems I used in JS extension and class components are used in JS extensions. Okay, for your last question, functional components can be used in any expression at all, either JS or JSX, okay? And the same thing with class components. They are all JavaScript, so whichever way you use them, they would actually work, all right? Um, I don't think there's any particular reason why one would want to use a functional component over a class component or use a class component over a functional component. It just depends on you. But the reason why you could actually use any one of your choice per se, I will get to that soon. So just pay attention. I'm getting there. All right. Okay. So like I was saying, this is what we had. Uh, Let me do this again. Okay, just for the sake of clarity. All right, so we have import. We have import React from React. Okay, now having this, we could actually call the class component. So we could say class hello extends, I could say react dot component. Now inside this we could render method, and we could return this, where we had a simple h1 that says hello from class components. Okay, all right, so this is a standard React class component. So we could export default hello, and we are good. All right, so if we go back and we check this, this is what we have. All right, it shows that this is working very well. Okay, now if we actually did want to pass props, okay, through this class component, now there's no need of writing props anywhere, not even inside this render. All we could just do is just add it. Okay, now but to add props with a class component, we need to add this keyword first. Okay, this dot props dot whatever it is you want to write, let's say name. This is props of name. Save this, and hello John Doe from class components, which I had already typed in here. This is hello. I imported it first. Okay, import hello from hello, and then this. Okay, so I hope this is okay. This is clear. This is understood. I hope that. So now, as I was saying, now let's say for example we want to do something with props. Okay, so like I said before, props are immutable. You cannot edit or modify a props, like assign the props to a value. Okay, no, you cannot do that. Props are immutable. You have to understand that you cannot modify or edit props. Okay, so you don't actually cause bugs in your code, because your code will not run. But there is a better way of passing data, okay, in components, which we shall talk about in a few minutes, which is a whole lot better and a whole lot more flexible than props. Okay, so React on its own is flexible. React doesn't give you much of a stress when you're using it. It's straightforward to understand as long as you have the basic knowledge of JavaScript. But please don't mess with props. Okay, I just keep stressing that out. Now let's say for example we want to create a greeting. Okay, like when I say a greeting, now I want to do something with class components, and I want to also do it with functional components, so we understand what we are talking about. All right, now we have this. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. All right. Now, let's say, for example, we want to make a date, let's say, using props. Okay. So let's do this like this. Now, this is props. Let's say below props of name, and actually with props we could also. All right. Before I move on to the next section of what I want to explain, now this is for class components. We could actually destructure this. Okay, destructuring is something that came out from year 6 and above. And with destructuring, it actually helps us to destructure destructure objects actually. So since this React component is actually part of this React library, we could destructure it, okay, and just bring out just components alone. And doing this, keep making a title here. Doing this, actually take this away and it still works. Okay, now destructuring this, now what did I just do? Let me explain. React.component is a way of referencing components, because with React, creating a class component, this is how we actually do it. This is how we instantiate a class component. Okay, class, the name of the component extends React.component, because React.component is also actually going to like build this class component for us. Okay, but there is a way whereby we don't have to write React.component all the time. We could just write component, and the way we can actually do that is by destructuring this. Okay, destructuring components to make it stand alone. Now this will make us write it this way. We could actually take away React.components and it's still going to stand. If you come back here, you see that everything is still working fine. Yes. Now, with using that same logic, we could still do the same thing to props and functional components. Now, if we destructure this and leave it as props.name, we could actually take away this props dot, okay, and we can have just name. All right. And it's looking like it's not working. Name is for it. Okay. I think that's, if you have props dot name, I think yeah. Sorry. If we actually destructure this and leave it as this, name equal to this, yeah. So this works. All right. Yes. So if you don't understand what I just did, please let me check the chat. Let me see. Hope you're all good, right? I think what I did was not that much of a magic. All right, so I am guessing that is a yes. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so then this is all right. After destructuring this, this is what we have. The same thing we did for class by destructuring components. I think we still have that. So I was asking if there was anyone that didn't understand that particular line of code, but there's a silence, so I'm guessing that's a yes. So you guys totally understand what I did. All right then. So say want to do something different now. For example, let's say want to say a greeting to someone and tell the person the time. Okay. Now we could actually do this. Okay, we could actually create an instantiation of the dates class using props, for example. Now, so what do I mean? Now, we could actually do this. Hello, name is this, and you create something else here, and could say new dates dots to, let's say dot to call time string. Let's say ng, and this is a function. And if we save this and we look here, can you guys still hear me?
Yes, you can.
All right, good. Sorry, I think I need to be confirming that from you guys often and on. Okay, so all right, so this is the time that we have currently at the moment. Now, let's say we wanted to do this with props. Okay, so what could we do? We could take away this new date. All right, take it off and come down to the greetings components and add another props. Okay, now adding another props here, we would have instead of name, let's call this dates. Dates is going to be equal to this new date. Then we could come down here and the same way with the structured name, you can add dates and come here and have dates. All right, so if you save this and we go back, we still have this. All right, now let's say for example we want to make sure that we call this at every interval. Okay, so what do we mean by at every interval? Let's say we add what's it called, a set interval down here. So we could say set interval and set interval, we take in greeting. So and we take in the amount of milliseconds we want to make sure that that works on. At this you see, so this is supposed to pass this in. Okay, let's see. So instead of this, let's let's take this off, put it here, and let's make something for it with it. Okay, so the greeting, let's take this here, save this. Wow, not showing again. Let me see. Okay. All right. Let me hold on. Let me hold on a minute to set interval, but then let me explain what I want to do. Okay. So all right. So let's save this and go back. All right. So this is what it shows. Okay. So all I was trying to do, I was trying to see if I could experiment with something. Sorry about that, guys. Um, Now we have another prop here called dates, where we're passing a class of the date instance into our greetings component via props. Okay, and if you notice one thing, what we are actually passing is actually this new date instance. Okay, so now this does not mutate these props. Okay, this does not mutate these props. At this point in time now, we can call these props an extension of this date because what this props is actually passing to that component is actually this new date. And what we are just doing is saying set new dates to the local time string of our local time zone. Okay, so it's actually going to give us All right. Now, for this, and with this, we could actually get this for the class components. But to get this for class components, this is what we would do. Okay, so I'm trying to do this so you guys see the difference between the class components and uh, a functional component. Okay, so we could say this. Let's say we have dates, and dates is equal to this new date. Okay, now let's not forget this. Save this and we come out here. Now fill this from, let's change this instead from class components. We add uh, this dot props dot dates. Okay, and what is wrong? Okay, maybe it's maybe take a look at this and everything is rendered very well. Okay, do generate it successfully. Okay. Alright, so this is supposed to work out fine. Sorry about this, guys. Sometimes React likes to make you react. Let me see what the error is. Okay, so cut child this. If going to render a collection of children, use an array method instead. Okay, let's see. Use the props of dates. Not working. I wonder why that's not working. Guys, just give me a little bit time. Okay. Oh, I think I forgot something. Dot to local time string. Okay, and I think that should do the trick. So close this. Yeah, we are back on track. Okay, sorry about that. I forgot to add the method for this. Remember, this date is also a class in JavaScript on its own. So I think there was a conflict there. All right, so I think this is what we have, and mind you, in as much as we could do this. Now, one other thing about components, which are into states, let's say for example, is the fact that components are actually done so that they could be reused over and over and over again. All right, so now what do I mean? Okay, let me just close this because I don't think I'll use this for now. I think I'll go back to that later, but not now. We could just comment this out and a component, and I think I want to create a card like a user profile. I want to explain a little bit of what components could actually do for us, or the right way we could actually be using components. Okay, so and one of that is the fact that, let's see, I want to create a profile card. All right, so we'll call this profile. Okay, now inside profile, what we want to get is we want to have an image. Okay, so I'll continue from. Now, under the image, you want to have called profile name. Okay. Now, we have this. Let me see. And then let's say you want to add more things inside. I could have dot profile body. Now inside profile body we could have dot profile dob, and we could change this from profile dob to profile description. Okay, I think this will do. And we just have a bunch of text inside this. Now let's see profile description. Yeah, developer. Okay, date of birth, just add the date of birth and we just say 20th 2000. Alright, sorry. Profile name, we just have don't do, and profile image, just a regular image, not at the moment, so don't really want to put any image there for now, so let's just hold on to that. Okay, so this is what we have. Now a profile could actually, a component could actually help us do a lot. Now for example, what would a component, what would React components actually help us do? Now we could actually take this, okay, and make it a component. Now when I say make it a component, we could actually make this a whole lot simpler. Now I'm using this as an example on the fly because I want us to actually understand and appreciate what components do for us, and that's the fact that the component is actually easier for us to replicate things over and over again, or we could take a very large chunk of code, turn it into a component, and could use it multiple times without having to write down those multiple lines of code over and over again, or having to do copy and paste multiple lines of code, and then before you know it, you get to make mistakes on one particular line or the other and all that. No, with components, it's a whole lot easier for us to do things like this. Okay, so we could actually take this off and create a component. Okay, let's see, we just create a component here, constant, we'll call this avatar, and we'll just pass in the props. Okay, we'll destructure this and we'll just call this user. Okay, so doing this, oh, sorry about that. Don't worry. We have this right, so right here we just paste this in. Why they rush like this? So we return, sorry, and we then encapsulate this inside a React fragment. All right. Okay. Inside here, we have this. Okay. and we could just have user here. All right, so having this, mistake somewhere. Okay, so all right, so we could just come down here where this used to be, and we could have the avatar with user. We call that jungle. Okay, so this will work very well. So we still have jungle here, and let's see, inside this profile body, yes, we could take this whole profile body out and we could call that profile description, and we could just create uh, something. Let's see. Uh, can you guys still hear me? What's the difference between
Yes.
this component? Okay. All right. All right. All right. Okay. Akinola, I'll come to your question in a few minutes. I'm trying to explain something. So now we could have this. I could just call this. Let's just say description. Description, and inside the description, we could destructure this into. We call the first one. We call the first one. Let's just say DOB, and call the second one description. Okay, so now then we return, and I keep using curly braces here. All right, so let's see. So just copy. We'll copy both. Copy these two. Okay. Either copy these two or copy the whole class and then still destructure these two. Whichever way, just paste this in here. I keep doing it again. Let's see. All right, so all right. Now, this like this, then you could take the structure, description, and crazy, and we have this. We still have the same thing. Okay. So now let me make a little bit of explanation with regards to Akinola's question and the ones created in smaller JSX files. Now, I was actually getting to that. Okay. Now, here's the thing. If you take a look at this particular component, you begin to see that this component is getting messy. Like too many things, and you don't really know what is what or what this particular component is doing exactly. Okay. Now, this is where creating components in little files actually come in. Okay. So with this, we could create a couple of components. Okay. Now, just like we did for this guy, where we had to create components in chunks, in little functions, and actually display them here. We could actually create components in files where we put little pieces of code and then display them inside a parent component. Now, the reason why this is actually done is because we want to make sure that our components are actually straight to the point. Components are supposed to be little functions that tell a particular, okay, if um, a React, I'm trying to look for the best possible way to explain this. Now, components actually tell a little story, but the story is actually straight to the point. Okay, let's say, for example, you create a component called hello. Now, someone seeing that component, that person is actually supposed to be, okay, fine. If I come to this component, I'm supposed to see something that actually links up with the name of this component called hello. So your component is supposed to be descriptive. Now, what do I mean by descriptive? The component is supposed to be described by its name. So that once you go into that component, what you see is actually what is actually named by the component. Okay, so let me explain. Let me do a little bit of practical with this.
I can't hear you. Voila.
All right, guys, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, I am sorry about that. I don't know why my network is actually bad today. Okay, so let me continue sharing my screen. All right, so I was trying to explain something here, and I was saying um, if you want to actually get the best way, or okay, there's a shortcut, okay, with VS Code. If you install this extension called ES7 React Redux and React Native snippets, it actually makes it easier for you to create both functional components and class components with ease. Okay, so for functional components, all you just have to do is type RA you say RAFC. RAFC is actually going to create RAFE. Is that RAFE or let's say RAFCE? Yeah, RAFCE is actually going to create a functional component for you. It's going to create a functional component on the fly, like a web. It's a whole lot easier than me typing import React on React on my own all the time. Okay, so this is just a piece of information for those who didn't know. So at least now you know. Now, like I was saying, with regards to Blessing's question, there's no much difference, or there really isn't much of a difference between creating components in little files and creating them in just functions like this, little by little. The thing is this: with components, creating them in little files like this, it gives other components that serve as the parent component or that serve as containers that contain other components a little bit of space and time, and it makes it more orderly and arranged. Okay, so now let's say, for example, like this avatar component that I created now that's called user. I could just come down here, okay, and copy avatar and just replace it with what I have here, okay, and I am good to go. All I just need to do is come here and import avatar from avatar. All right, so if I save this and I save this, now this is the only difference between creating a component outside, you know, another component and creating it inside a file. So create a component inside a fellow component, you don't need to import it, but once you create it inside another file, you have to import it. But basically, both of them do the same thing. Okay, Blessing, I hope that's answered your question. All right, so we could actually do that for a couple of them. So importing this is what we have. We could also, let's see, we could create for description. We just call this description dot .gsx, and for description is this is what we could use, RCE. RCE is going to create a class component, and if you do this, this is what our class component is actually going to look like. Okay, for I'm used to using functional components most of the time, and I don't really use class components most of the time. So I'm just going to change this to AFCE, and this is going to create a description for me, which I can just come here and carry this, and I know that if I come here, I can paste this here, and import description. Now from description, and we are good to go. All right, so looking at this now, you find out that this actually makes it a whole lot easier for us to work with. Okay, using this makes it a whole lot easier for us to work with. I think we have DLP, so we can actually change this to let's say Ctrl X, and we'll call this DLP. Come down here, set description, just call DOB here. just paste this string here. Also call this description. Okay. Inside here, could also do another one. Just paste this. So since it's actually very short, so we could just do that. I think that is that. Yeah. So saving this, check what we have. It's still working the same way. So we don't really have much. So we are good to go. All right. Now this is how we create components and class components in React. Okay, so we'll be moving down to something else called states. And all right, okay, let me just make a recap of everything we just learned so far so that it's actually going to be easier. So that after that we move on. So we just mentioned that we could actually use components. Components are functions. We could put them inside different files and link them. And the only in the same file as you're working with and putting it in a different file is the fact that you have to import it. But importing it makes it a lot easier and makes your code a lot more neater. Okay, like say for example, now this profile component we just created, we'll create a file for it and we'll just call that profile. Okay, we'll call this profile.jsx, and all we could just do is this. We'll say RAFCE. After doing that, we have this. So we could just come down to app.js and take away all of this and go down to the profile and paste all of this inside here. Now, pasting all of this inside here, we have to make sure that we move these components, their imports, from where they used to be before to inside the profile component. So I am just going to copy this, or cut rather, and come here and paste this in and save this, and then go back here, and then I can now import the profile component, import profile from profile, and then I can just paste it in here. All right, so we don't need tools. All right, so if you still check, you find that we still have the same thing down there. Yeah, but now it makes this particular part of our code a lot more cleaner. Okay, it makes it look a whole lot neater and less code. So yes, a component, in as much as when you're working, when you're working whatever it is you're working on, and you see that a particular component is taking up a whole lot of lines in the code, the best thing you can actually do is to lessen that component by making all other things that are sub-components of that particular component into components of their own. Yes, there are sub-components to will still be called in here, but it's going to make your component structure a whole lot less cumbersome. Okay, it's not going to make it look so tedious, but then this is actually going to work when you're having large scale applications where you get to reuse components a lot. So things that you make use of most of the time are things that are supposed to be components that you have to import into separate files and folders. Now depending on the structure that you have with you. Okay, so that's about that for components. Now we'll be going into state. Now state is kind of like props, but the difference between state and props is that state is mutable, state can be changed, but unlike props, state can only be used in a particular component. What do I mean? State is local to one component. Okay, the state you use in your profile, sorry, in your description component cannot be accessed by your avatar component. Okay, the only way it can actually be accessed is if these other components are actually linked to a parent component where the state is actually found. And that's why in the first lecture we had, we said that React actually works with a one-way data flow. Okay, so when we said one-way data flow, it meant that if you have your states now in your app.js component, you found that all other components, since they're actually going to be linked to your app.js, your states, they can actually tap in from that data that your state is actually providing it, and then they can be able to use that particular state on a general level. But apart from that, if your state is actually focused benefit from it, else it's going to be a whole lot more tedious for you working with state. Okay, that's why sometimes you get that whenever you use code at certain places, if you use it, uh, instead of it actually working the way you expect it to work, some things don't update on the first time because state is not usually updated, via a component. But if it's actually on a general level, yes, you can actually use state to its full measure. But apart from that, there's really no much difference, okay, about states. All right, so let's see. Let me explain that. I think explaining states, I'll be bringing back this hello component. That's a class component. So, of course, I want to actually explain something using this. Okay. Now, remember, I think that was the first time before my network went bad. You guys weren't hearing me. I was trying to show you guys how table, you could actually use props to pass down data from your state down to your rendering method so that it could actually be accessed by the element in which you're actually using. Okay, so what do we mean? Let's say, for example, like I did before, where we wanted to, use this props of time dot date for that to get the local time in wherever it is that we are. We could actually get that. Okay, let's see. Um, sorry about that. Uh, if you take this out, now come to our hello.js. I want to add states to a class component. So this is how we add states to a class component. Now we use the constructor. Now inside the constructor, we have props. Now we pass these props inside the constructor because with these props, it's going to be a whole lot easier for us to grab the value of the states using props, and we can actually render it inside our code. Okay. All right. So or let me actually show you guys how to do this with state first, then before I use props. Okay. So we have super, and inside super we have our state, which is going to be this dot state, which is going to be equal to this. Let me save this. Now, one thing we have to know, our state is actually an object, so it goes with key value pairs. Now, this is state for us. This dot state is equal to this. Oh, I'm sorry about this, but super is actually a method of constructor, it doesn't really do much. All right, so I think this is what we have. Now, if we wanted to pass this state now into this, if you go back and check, you're going to see that we refresh. Hello, Franklin. It's not actually coming up for. Let's okay. Let me do something. Let me bring this back. I commented it out. So commented hello out, and if you actually come down here like this. Now you see that it's not actually working because state has not. Now there's no props at the moment. Okay, that's actually calling this dot date. This is a props dot date to local string, but um, we have our state now. So instead of props, we change props to state. So we have this dot state dot local time string. Now, if we save this and we check, we should have. All right. So this is not working. Why? Let's see. Okay, for hello. Okay, we have dates. It's clashing. So let me take this off. All right. So hello, and let me check this. Working perfect. Fine. Let's see. Let's inspect and see why it's not showing. Uncut type error date is undefined averages 7. Let's see. Okay, greeting averages. Okay, let's see. I think I took it out from the wrong place, so I don't really need this actually, so I can actually just take this off and save that, and I think that should actually do the trick. Yeah. All right. I'm sorry about that, guys. Sometimes you get overwhelmed. Okay, so as I was saying, now, guys, can you still see my screen? Can you still hear me?
Yes, boss.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Please, if there's any questions, please just drop them in the chat as the class goes along, so we know what we're actually doing. All right, so as I was saying, okay, so I have a bad screen. Okay, so now this is where I wanted to actually check out these states. I wanted to check out states using class components. Now, state is actually something that's kind of tricky, and although we're not going to cover it so much in this particular class, but I'm going to introduce states to you guys, and I'm actually going to introduce something else too to you guys too. It's called hooks. I think I made mention of that at the beginning of this particular class. Now, using states with class components, this is how you use state with class components. So with class components, it's actually a whole lot more, let's say, easier. So all you just have to do is call the constructor method or the constructor function, and then use the super method first before you actually use your state. Now, one thing you need to know, state is built into React, okay? And state is a JavaScript object. Now, so what do I mean by state is actually a JavaScript object? So just like we have dates, which is equal to a new date, so we could also have something else that can be passed in, and it could be anything at all. Okay, so let's see, for example, we have name equals to John Doe. Okay, so we could take this out and we could pass it. Okay, we could pass it using states. Now, how do we actually do that? So just come down here, and this is all we have. Now, instead of equals, since it's an object, so it has to be in a key value pair form. So this is what we have. Hello guys, can you still see my screen?
Yes, you are seeing it, sir.
All right, I just wanted to be sure. Let's. All right, so all right, so this is where I was. Let me have to expand this more. All right, so like I was saying, you can actually add more to your state. Okay, so now adding this name equals to John Doe. Now instead of this dot props dot name, you do this dot state dot name. Okay, so saving this. Now I will go back to our React project and check to find that this is hello John Doe from time, and it's still showing very well. Okay, so this is still showing very okay. This is still very okay. This is how we use state in a class component. Now this is let's say the stepping stone, okay, in which we have until we actually come into let's say building big projects with React and using them. All right, so I think we touched a lot today. So, this is what I actually had prepared for you guys today. I'm using this. I wanted to touch hooks today, but if I don't really break down the concept of how hooks came about, although most of you must have come across hooks in your learning, but I feel you need to understand what's actually brought about hooks, or the problem that hooks is actually trying to solve, before you actually get to know how to use it very well. That way it gives you a more clearer understanding and in-depth understanding of what hooks are all about. Okay, so but I'll have to stop here for today, which is I think we covered components, we covered props, and this is how we use states. Okay, now come our next class on Thursday, we'll discuss a little bit more on how to use states when building a little application. Okay, the things that we want to actually watch out for, the things you want to take note of, and how to make sure that you use that to our full advantage. Now, using this will actually help us understand and appreciate how states works in JavaScript. Okay, but first of all, we also want to save this. Now, state is actually an object in JavaScript that can take in any value. Okay, so using objects, you could actually use objects and take even an array here to call these numbers. And I think let me just say this before I go. State will actually take this where I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this is still acceptable. State can take in as much as a lot of them. Okay, so it doesn't really matter whatever we actually do, state can actually take it. So one other thing, since state is actually mutable, which means states can be changed. So what do we mean? We could actually change our state, but how do we change states? Now, I think that's something we need to understand. Okay, so let me quickly brush this up before we go. Let's say we have a button here, and the button says click me to change name. Now this is what our button says. All right. So all we want to do is that on click of this button, I think say we have this. Okay, I think let's do it this way. I'll just cover all of this inside a React fragment. And put this inside here so that this it's going to be a whole lot easier. Let's see. All right, so save this. Now the button is at the bottom. Now I want to make sure that once we click this button, something happens. I want to change this from John Doe to whichever name of our choice. Okay, so how would we go about this? Now, first things first, you want to do is you want to create a method, let's say, call this handle name change. Now happen. I want to make sure that name is changed from instead of okay, let's return this dot state dot name. I want to change it to what? Let's say names, let's say James Dane. All right, so let's change that to this. Or if we do this and we handle this by saying using the on click and we pass in this function which is handle name change, and mind you, as function will only be referencing it without referencing this function. Handle name change, that's the name change. Let me see. Copy this. Paste here. Alright, so name change is not defined. Let's see. Alright, let me get this and let me see what's actually causing the error. Okay, so let me see. Sorry guys, I'm coming. I'm trying to work on this to see what's actually causing the error. Okay, handle name change not being defined. Okay, so okay, I think I forgot something I was supposed to add here, which is supposed to be this dot handle name change. So save this. I'm sorry, I'm so used to using functional components, so don't blame me for this. All right, so we want to make sure that when we click on this button, the name changes from uh, John Doe to Jane Dane. So let's do that. And click on the button. Even after doing this, we found that it doesn't work. Okay. Now the reason why it doesn't work is because we are not how do I put this? We're not actually hitting the state, or we're not actually changing the state. Okay, we are not changing the state at all by just returning this alone, this dot state dot name equal to this. Okay. Uh, Now this is going to be my assignment to you. All right, which is going to be change this state and make it work. When we come our next class on Thursday, we'll actually see the solution to this problem. All right. So by Thursday, let's say before Thursday, I think that should be submitted so you can actually go about it. All right. It's just a little exercise for you guys to do. I think come on Thursday before we start. That's what we'll talk about. All right. But I just want to leave you guys with this little piece of mystery to see how you can fix it using class components. Let's see how it goes. Okay. So until on Thursday, this is where I will leave you guys. So I'll see you guys on Thursday. Thank you very much.